Hello, and welcome to a special edition of the news you're never going to find in the news because the news no longer reports the news, they just follow the narrative. So, this isn't just news today. Today, we're going to be action oriented. So, today's number 5 on December 7th, 2020 is going to be entitled Action. So, the type of action I want to take is to take some things that I did in number 3 about cases and push it out there to people in the community and get some responses to some questions that are being asked about the things that we covered in number 3. So obviously, if you haven't seen number 3, you're probably going to want to see it before you watch this. If not, no big deal. Either way, whatever works for you. So I'm saying hello and thank you, and then I have some questions to the individual who wrote this email to me and the surrounding community. So no secrets here. This is obviously about schools. So it's going to be taken in that direction. It's going to be obvious as we go. So on November 10th, 2020, a letter was sent. And basically, I didn't want to blast this individual out in public because I have nothing against this individual. I just wanted to show you the things that they pointed out as to why they were closing schools so that I would obviously have a response that made sense to what they said, of course, right? So ultimately, this week, with cases continuing to skyrocket in our community, it became even more clear that it was no longer a question of if we would need to close, but when. So obviously, cases is the big deal why they're shutting down. Our contact tracing team and health services is struggling to keep up, and our public health partners have admitted that they are so strained that their case and contact investigations are significantly delayed. To give you an idea, on and on and on. Eventually you got to the word quarantine. So we're talking about quarantining. We're talking about cases. That's going to be one point that I'm going to hit, obviously the biggest one. And then the second one is I'm going to hit a little bit on is contact tracing. So we're going to try to go there point by point, right? So basically, I'm trying to figure out what does this even mean. Hopefully this individual and those who advise him are know what this means. So in number 3, I did the WHO definition, but the same definition is for the CDC. So I did the CDC for this one. And the CDC just says same thing as WHO says, which is confirmed laboratory evidence, right? So a positive test, essentially, right? So how does someone get a laboratory confirmation of COVID-19 infection? Obviously, they stick that thing up their nose. But what happens after that? So we went through this before, but you take the sample and you amplify by PCR, and then if there's presence of COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2 in the viral sample, then you're positive, right? So, but to me at least, that previous slide begs the question, what does it mean to amplify by PCR? So just in case they don't know what that means, I put this in. We're not going to watch it, but it talks about the important pieces, especially the part where it says it repeats for about 20 to 40 cycles. And what does that mean, right? We'll get to that, of course. So I just wanted to kind of summarize everything as before. The main thing I added in this is because I'm hoping to maybe send this to county health officials, state health officials, maybe, who knows how far I'll take it up the ladder. But in just a little caveat here, if you want to take this, make a copy of your own and send this to your local health labs or your local health department or whatever, please feel free to do that. And if you get anything back, please let me know. But anyway, if I'm talking to experts like this, they're going to know way more about this stuff than I do. So I want to know if I'm wrong in any of this, and I would love to be corrected in any way, shape, or form, because I want to be better too. I don't want to just pretend like I know everything, of course. So you'll notice that through some of these. So exponential growth, they're probably going to know that way better than me, but I wanted to show them, hey, the difference between 20 cycles and 40 cycles is monstrous, right? And I also wanted to point out why that was important, because I would, the layman may think that the higher the better, right? Because I definitely want to know. I don't want a bad
A lot of people,
culture, right? I don't want it to say no when I do have it, of course, right? So Then I talk about the problem of all these cycles and what all this stuff means. So I talked about this Krohmann-Drosten review, and that basically if someone is tested by a PCR as positive when a threshold of 35 cycles or higher is used, the probability of the person is actually infected is less than 3%, and the probability that said result is a false positive 97%. So just pointing out the problem here, of course, right? So I want an answer to this question, maybe not specifically from the gentleman who sent me that email, but definitely from the experts at the health departments, right? Because they would be the ones who would hopefully be able to read all these papers and understand them and digest them and dissect them and be able to hopefully have a cogent answer to my questions, right? If they chose to do so. So I wanted to know if they have seen the paper, if they agree or disagree, why or why not. Because if they don't, these judges in Portugal did, right? Because they cited the study, what they're highlighted in yellow, that they did. And so it's kind of a big deal, at least in my opinion. Then I got to this article that I made a big deal of in number 3. I took some things out because I wanted to make it more concise, but I'm not going to run through it again, but I wanted to answer a lot of questions about that article because a lot of big things were said, and so I'm hoping for a lot of big answers. So I wanted to know if so I took quotes from the article and then asked questions after the quote. So the number of amplification cycles needed to find the virus is never included in the results since the doctors and coronavirus patients. I wanted to know if that was the case, and then a lot of different questions after that. And then I basically want to know what's the cycle threshold that they use, or the state that we're in, or the county that we're in, or the company that they get their tests from. I want to know what the number is. See if they know or will give me that answer. I want to know that the fact that in the article, doctors or somebody was saying that any test with a cycle threshold above 35 is too sensitive. I want to know if they agree. I want to know a lot of different things, right? I want to know if they agree with these doctors. I want to know if they agree with the CDC. I want to know what our numbers would look like, depending on, or their numbers, however you want to characterize it. If they, let's say the cycle threshold of theirs is 40 or 37 or whatever it might be, probably 40, then if their numbers were cut off at 35, what would they look like? They would obviously be smaller, but what would they be? Would they be serious or not serious, at least in their world? So maybe I'll follow up with more questions if I can get any answers from the first set. So, or 30, which is obviously going to be even lower. So I wanted to know if we are testing with a cycle threshold of 40. Do they agree with Dr. Mina that no one should be contact traced? So there goes back. That's my probably one and only question into contact tracing, but it'd be nice to get an answer on that. And then kind of the biggest question of all is questioning the use of PCR tests as a frontline diagnostic tool. So then I kind of got into this a little bit because the definition of the CDC of a case is different than a case by the FDA. So this is an example of what a case looked like for Moderna in their trials for the COVID-19 vaccine. So as you can see, if you stop that and read that, it's different. So based upon that, I wanted to know if they had any answers as to why these two organizations had different definitions for cases, and why Moderna and Pfizer were made to define, characterize, however you want to say it, their vaccine trials, their cases differently than what we do typically in our world of health departments and such. But anyway, and I got into this, which was not in number 3, the Oxford University Center for Evidence-Based Medicine. They did a systematic review of published on, obviously, like I said, the 3rd of December this year. by Oxford University Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, they confirmed that COVID-19 PCR testing patient sample cycle thresholds above 30 are associated with negative viral cultures and or are non-infectious. So 2 results reported that odds of live virus culture reduced by approximately 33% for every 1 unit increase in cycle threshold. Crazy, huh? Complete live virus. So their conclusion was that complete live viruses are necessary for transmission, not the fragments identified by PCR, so on and so forth. So I just wanted to ask them if they agreed with the Oxford University Center for Evidence-Based Medicine that the 2 studies reported that the odds of live culture reduced, if they think that's true or not. And I want to know if they agreed that the anything above 30 was associated with negative viral cultures. The next thing I wanted to tell them was that the state of Florida did something amazing on the same day that I put out my cases video. They made reporting of cycle threshold values mandatory in that state. And that is so cool. And I hope every state in the country does it, but I'm not holding my breath. So I basically want to know if they think that that was a good decision, and if they think other counties and states or cities or whoever might be able to pull it off should follow suit, and why or why not. So then I took the local case numbers that they used to make their decision. If they believe, based on everything that we know now, do they believe that these case counts are accurate? I want to know if so or if not. And because if not, what can we do to get a more accurate count? The next thing I wanted to show them is just the other cost of what they're doing to shut down schools. So on November 12th, JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, easy for me to say, they did a study, and it was an estimation of U.S. children's educational attainment and years of life lost associated with primary school closures during the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic. So their conclusion was that this decision analytical model found that missed instruction during 2020 could be associated with an estimated 5.53 million years of life lost. This loss in life expectancy was likely to be greater than would have been observed if leaving primary schools open had led to an expansion of the first wave of the pandemic. So it's just an utterly devastating conclusion. So I wanted to know if they agree with the study. There's a couple questions there. The next thing I hit was the United Nations Children's Fund, which basically saying is schools are not the main driver of COVID among kids, on and on and on. I think I mentioned this in number 3, but I thought that they would take this one the most seriously because it's 191 countries that they took all their data and evidence from to make their conclusions. So I wanted to know if they agreed with the conclusions of the UNICEF study, and it would be nice to get an answer. So the next thing I did was I found this dashboard. So NPR, I assume that the folks that I send this to would take NPR seriously. They talked about this dashboard in a story, so I linked it at the bottom, and then I linked the actual dashboard itself, took a screenshot of the dashboard, and it shows their entire data period. So the most recent data that they have is from November 22nd, probably right before the Thanksgiving break, from the very beginning of school until Thanksgiving, essentially, right? So we have all these students, and then you divide that number at the bottom and by the number from the top, or vice versa, whichever way that gets the smallest number. And that's going to be your case rate, and it's going to be a ridiculously low. So if basically the whole point of this is saying, hey, if this is the data that you're using to shut everybody down, then you need to look at this, because if those few cases are what's making you shut down, then please consider this devastating cost and devastating loss of life, because obviously any of these losses of life sucks, or doesn't even say if any of these cases resulted in a loss of life, but obviously any case sucks. Any result of life sucks a bazillion times more. But if we're looking at 5.53 million years of life lost, that pales in comparison. So just kind of a little perspective, hopefully. So then I just kind of review the questions that I talked about, so they have them in all one clear, clean, concise place, so that hopefully they're more likely to answer them. And then I say, thanks that, you've obviously in a position of leadership, I don't have to worry about the ramifications of the decisions that they make. So it's easy for me to say the things that I'm saying. So they've obviously been put in an impossible position, because, if it's me who's pushing back, then it's going to be however many more people on the other side pushing the other direction. So they can't win either way, right? So and then I obviously just told them that I'm looking forward to the answers to my questions. So then I put in a little graphic of something my school came up for this school year that just kind of exemplifies the year, hopefully, I guess, and hopefully they'll like that and kind of know where I'm coming from. I don't know. Just trying to be nice, I guess. But anyway, that's it for today. I hopefully will get some answers back, and if I do, I'll let you know. Like I said, tomorrow, hopefully I'll make another one of these to show you exactly what my presentation to one of these folks will be. And that's that. Have a good one. We'll see you.